It's no coincidence that her son, Lewis, is also 5 years old. Bullock adopted him in 2010, the same year she filed for divorce from her ex-husband, Jesse James.
You have a precious little boy who
I do.
Have I met him? No.
I don't think you have.
Why not?
I feel like you have, but you haven't. But maybe it's because he's from New Orleans and you're from New Orleans.
In January 2010, Sandra Bullock brought home a 3-month-old baby from New Orleans. She named him Lewis. Today, that baby is a teenager who gives his Oscar-winning mother career advice. But here's what nobody expected. Lewis looks exactly like someone from Sandra's past. Someone she hasn't spoken about in years. The photos are shocking. Same jawline, same eyes, same mannerisms. The similarity is so strong, even Sandra's closest friends had to ask uncomfortable questions. The truth is stranger than any movie plot. She was born on July 26, 1964, in Arlington, Virginia. Her mother was Helga Meyer, a German opera singer, and her father, John Bullock, worked as a voice coach and for the U.S. Army. But Sandra Bullock didn't grow up in America. When she was just a toddler, her family moved to Nuremberg, Germany. That's where she spent most of her childhood, learning the language, living around music, and absorbing European culture. Her mother's opera career meant the family kept moving. From one European city to another, Sandra grew up backstage at grand theaters, surrounded by singers, actors, and musicians. By the time she turned 5, Sandra wasn't just watching operas. She was in them. She joined children's choirs for live productions across Europe, performing in famous operas like The Magic Flute and Carmen. These weren't school plays. These were serious productions where she had to learn real music, rehearse with professionals, and follow strict schedules. She performed in German. She learned discipline early. While most kids her age were playing at home, Sandra was traveling with artists, sitting in orchestra pits, and standing under stage lights. But life wasn't always glamorous. When her family returned to the U.S. and settled in the Washington, D.C. area, the cultural shift hit her hard. She didn't fit in. Her classmates made fun of her frumpy German clothes. She felt out of place. They didn't understand her, and she didn't quite understand them. That early taste of rejection stayed with her, but it also taught her empathy. She knew how it felt to be the outsider in the room. German remained her first language. She spoke it at home, and she still speaks it fluently today. She even holds dual citizenship, both German and American. That mix of identities shaped how she looked at the world. It made her performances feel grounded and different. In a world of cookie-cutter Hollywood stars, she brought something no one else could: authenticity, born from two worlds. Her childhood was filled with constant change, new cities, new schools, new friends. By age 10, she had already lived in several places across Germany and Austria. That constant moving taught her how to adapt, how to read a room, how to connect with people quickly. It also made her tough. You don't survive that kind of instability without learning how to stay steady. After high school, she enrolled at East Carolina University. She studied theater and got close to graduating. But in 1986, with just 3 credits left, she dropped out. She said school was boring. She didn't want a degree. She wanted New York. She moved there with no guarantee of anything. Just a dream. New York City wasn't kind. She had no money. She worked nights as a bartender, cocktail waitress, and coat checker. She'd finish a shift at 2 a.m. and be at acting class by 6. She lived in a small apartment with no heat, barely scraping by on ramen and coffee. But she never quit. That grind taught her humility. She saw how hard life could be. It made her tough and grateful, 2 things you can't fake on camera. In 1987, she landed her first movie role in a low-budget thriller called Hangmen. Nobody noticed it. Then came a few more straight-to-video films like Religion Ink, and Who Shot Patacango? None of them were hits. Most are nearly impossible to find today. But Sandra wasn't embarrassed by them. She said they taught her what not to do and reminded her where she started. Things began to change in 1988 when she starred in a small off-Broadway play called No Time Flat. It wasn't a huge production, but one performance caught the attention of a talent agent. He signed her, and soon she got a role in the 1989 TV movie Bionic Showdown, The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman. She played a young scientist. It wasn't a lead role, but it was enough to get her noticed. In 1990, she finally landed a lead. NBC gave her the starring role in Working Girl, a sitcom based on the hit movie. She played Tess McGill, but the show didn't last. Critics didn't like it. The ratings dropped. After just 12 episodes, it was canceled. Still, it helped her get her foot in the door. And more importantly, it taught her that failure doesn't mean the end. When Sandra Bullock landed the role of Annie Porter in Speed back in 1994, it wasn't because she was the first pick. The character wasn't even meant for someone like her. Originally, Annie was written as a no-nonsense African-American paramedic. Halle Berry was the top choice, especially after her success in Boomerang, but she turned it down. She later joked that she didn't want to drive that bus and didn't see enough lines in the script. Other big names like Meryl Streep and Kim Basinger were also considered. Sandra wasn't on anyone's radar, but she showed up to the audition anyway. No fancy set, just a folding chair and a paper plate as her steering wheel. It was raw and unpolished, but something clicked. Her chemistry with Keanu Reeves, who also wasn't the studio's first choice, turned out to be electric. That spark would become the secret weapon behind the film's success. When Speed hit theaters on June 10, 1994, no one expected it to become a monster hit, but it did. The film made $350.4 million worldwide. It had a budget of just $30 to $37 million. That's nearly 10 times the return. Overnight, Sandra Bullock went from unknown to global star. And suddenly, Hollywood couldn't get enough of her. By the very next year, she was headlining romantic comedies. In 1995, While You Were Sleeping became another massive success. It earned $182 million globally. Her role got her nominated for a Golden Globe. And just like that, she wasn't just an action star. She was a rom-com queen, too. Audiences loved her. Studios knew she could sell tickets. She had officially become bankable. That same year, Sandra made a bold move. She started her own production company. Fortis Films was born in 1995 with her college friend Mark Brunetz. It was officially registered on April 16, 1996. The company ran operations out of both Austin, Texas, and West Hollywood. Her sister, Gesine Bullock Prado, acted as president for the first 5 years. Sandra wasn't just acting anymore. She was producing, negotiating, and shaping her own future. In 1997, she even signed a first-look deal with Warner Brothers, a major power play. Through Fortis Films, she backed projects she believed in. The company was behind Hope Floats in 1998, Miss Congeniality in 2000, and 2 Weeks' Notice in 2002. All three were box office hits. She even moved into TV, producing the sitcom George Lopez, which ran from 2002 to 2007. Very few actresses in the 90s were calling shots like that. But Sandra was setting a new standard. Still, not every decision was perfect. Speed 2, Cruise Control, came in 1997, and it was a mess from the start. Keanu Reeves didn't return, and Sandra was unsure. But Fox wanted her. They offered her $11 million, up from the $500,000 she made on the first film. But she didn't just say yes, she made a deal. She told the studio she'd do Speed 2 only if they funded her passion project, Hope Floats. Fox agreed. So she took the hit to make something she believed in. The gamble paid off for her, even if the movie flopped. Speed 2 cost as much as $160 million and earned just $164.5 million worldwide. Barely any profit. Critics ripped it apart. The slower pace, the weak plot, the missing Keanu, it all fell flat. The film won Worst Remake or Sequel at the Razzies. Sandra herself later called it an embarrassing experience and joked that only 5 people ever liked it. In December 2003, Sandra Bullock arranged a surprise garage tour for her godson, who was obsessed with a show called Monster Garage. Its host, Jesse James, built $300,000 custom motorcycles in Long Beach, California. That's where Sandra brought the boy, just to give him something unforgettable. But instead of just a garage visit, something else clicked. Sparks flew between Sandra and Jesse. She was America's sweetheart. He was a tattoo-covered biker with a reputation. Nobody expected that visit to turn into a relationship, let alone a full-blown marriage. But it did. And what started as a sweet gesture for a child became one of the most dramatic love stories in Hollywood history. The two got married on July 16, 2005, in Santa Barbara. Sandra was 41. Jesse came with baggage, 3 kids, and one of them, Sonny, was born to an adult film star, Janine Linda Mulder. Janine wasn't just a former porn actress, she was a convicted felon. By December 2009, after a long, messy custody fight and Janine's prison sentence for tax evasion, Sandra and Jesse won custody of Sonny. Sandra didn't just tolerate Jesse's children, she embraced them. She once said, "I married into children. I love those children. My concern and my love is no less than if I had that child biologically." That statement silenced a lot of critics. It proved she wasn't just a movie star playing house. She meant it. But the dream came crashing down. In March 2010, just days after Sandra won her first Oscar for The Blind Side, the headlines exploded. At least 5 women came forward, claiming they'd had affairs with Jesse James during the marriage. Tattoo models, strippers, even someone from his own shop. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a public spectacle. One woman, Michelle "Bombshell" McGee, sold her story, revealing texts, meetings, and details that flooded the tabloids. Jesse publicly admitted his guilt, but it was too late. The Oscar that should have been her high point became a reminder of what she lost. 10 days. That's all the time she got to celebrate. March 7th, 2010, her big win. March 17th, the day the cheating scandal broke. Instead of basking in career success, she was drowning in heartbreak. Paparazzi camped outside her home. Her private life was ripped open. And to make things even harder, she was in the middle of adopting a baby boy, something she'd kept entirely secret. She had brought home Louis, just 3.5 months old, in January 2010. But now, she was adopting alone. On April 23, 2010, she filed for divorce. The process dragged on until June 28, 2012. All the while, she stayed quiet, focused on Louis. She once said, "How do you process grief and not hurt your child in the process?" She refused to let her pain touch her son's first year of life. That took strength most people never see. And somehow, through all the noise and scandal, she kept Louis's adoption a secret from the world. Even at the Oscars, she carried his lime green socks in her purse as a secret connection to him. Louis was born in New Orleans, a city that had haunted Sandra since Hurricane Katrina. She once said, "Something told me that my child was there." She felt pulled to that place, and once Louis arrived, the bond made sense. Her love for the city went beyond words. She donated hundreds of thousands to a local school, gave surprise speeches, and quietly became a part of the community. She didn't just adopt a child, she adopted a mission. She named him Louis, After jazz legend Louis Armstrong, his middle name, Bardo, had layers, after a German saint, a Buddhist concept about life and death, and even a nod to her late mother, whose middle name was Louise. Every part of the name meant something. It was music, it was history, it was healing. In 2015, Sandra adopted again. This time, a 2.5-year-old girl named Layla. Like Louis, Layla was from Louisiana. She had been through foster care and carried deep fears. Paparazzi tried to expose the adoption before it was finalized. At one point, they even followed them to the emergency room, but Sandra fought back. She protected her daughter the way any fierce mother would. She even took parenting classes to better understand trauma. And through it all, Louis helped Layla feel safe. Sandra said, "Louis spearheaded this whole journey." It was the middle of the night, June 8, 2014, when Sandra Bullock returned to her Bel Air mansion. She was exhausted, fresh from a long day, and ready to finally rest. After a shower, she slipped into bed, unaware that something unthinkable was about to happen. Her son Louis wasn't home that night. The nanny had taken him to her apartment nearby, thinking Sandra would be home late. That simple decision might have saved his life. At around 1:00 a.m., Sandra heard something. A noise, then another. She assumed it was coming from her workout room, but it kept moving closer. That's when it hit her. Someone was inside the house. Alone and frozen with fear, she locked her bedroom door, then bolted into the closet. She dialed 911 and whispered for help. Her mind raced. She had just watched episodes of 48 Hours and Dateline. She had seen stories like this, only now she was living one. She thought, "This doesn't end well." The terror in her voice was clear. She stayed hidden until police arrived. Every second felt like a lifetime. The man who had broken into her home was Joshua James Corbett. He had been stalking her for days. Police later said he was obsessed. He had stood outside her gates, watching her. He kept notes. That night, he jumped the fence, rang her doorbell for nearly 15 minutes, then slipped in through a sunroom door. In his backpack was a letter to Sandra, magazine clippings of her face, and a permit to carry a gun in Utah. Corbett owned 8 registered firearms. He didn't bring one that night, but he didn't need to. His words were disturbing enough. In his notebook, he wrote things like, "You are my wife by law, the law of God, and you belong to me." He even mentioned her son. After that night, Sandra wasn't the same. She later said she was unraveling. She developed severe PTSD. Sometimes, all it took was looking left out of a car window, and she'd start crying. It happened again and again. There was no warning, no logic. The trauma was buried deep. As a single mother, she feared what this would do to her son. Would he grow up sensing her fear? Would he inherit it? She was determined not to let that happen. So she turned to therapy, EMDR, a specialized treatment for trauma survivors. She said it helped her find her footing again. Slowly, she began to heal. Meanwhile, Corbett's life continued spiraling. He was arrested shortly after the break-in, held on a $2 million bond. In 2017, he pleaded no contest to felony stalking and burglary. He was given 5 years probation, a decade-long no-contact order, and mandatory mental health treatment. But by 2018, he had stopped showing up to court. On May 2nd, police came to his home to arrest him. Corbett barricaded himself inside. A SWAT team arrived. The standoff lasted 5 hours. When they finally entered the house, they found him dead. He had taken his own life. Sandra Bullock wasn't looking for love when she met Randall in January 2015. She had simply hired him to take photos at her son Louis's 5th birthday party. Randall, once a model, now a photographer, showed up with his camera. But something clicked between them, something strong. Within months, they were seen together at Jennifer Aniston and Justin Theroux's wedding. That August night in 2015 marked the first time the world saw them as a couple. Things moved fast, but it never felt rushed. Randall moved in with Sandra and her 2 adopted children, Louis and Layla. By 2016, people close to her said she was the happiest they'd ever seen her. Randall became more than a partner. He became a father figure. He helped raise the kids as if they were his own, while also staying connected to his daughter from a previous relationship. Sandra, who had been through a painful divorce from Jesse James in 2010, finally had someone who brought calm into the chaos. In 2021, she spoke openly about Randall during an interview on Red Table Talk. She called him the example I'd want my children to have. She said he wasn't just kind, he was patient. He was the fun parent. Even when they didn't agree, he taught by example. Their home, though full of kids and busy days, became a peaceful space built on love, not headlines. But behind that peace, a storm had already begun. In 2020, Randall was diagnosed with ALS, a brutal disease that slowly shuts the body down. He started losing control of his muscles. Eventually, even talking and breathing become impossible. Most people with ALS survive only 2 to 3 years after diagnosis. Randall lasted 3, and no one outside the home even knew. Sandra and Randall kept it all hidden. They didn't want the kids to grow up watching someone they loved waste away, so they shielded them from it. They didn't tell most friends, not even extended family. It was their secret. They created a bubble, one filled with nurses, love, and as much normal life as possible. Sandra stopped taking major roles. She focused on him, on the kids, on holding things together. Her sister, Gesina, later said that Sandra turned their house into a full-time care center. Nurses were like family. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Sandra locked down tighter than anyone else. Only a few people were allowed inside. She knew ALS would take everything from Randall, his speech, his movement, his breath. But she was determined it wouldn't take their peace. On August 5, 2023, Brian Randall died at age 57. Sandra was there. So were the kids. His death was announced with a quiet statement from the family. They thanked the doctors and nurses who had helped. They asked for privacy. And they grieved, deeply but silently. Michael Oher thought he was part of a loving family. The world thought so too. In 2009, The Blind Side hit theaters and moved millions. Sandra Bullock won an Oscar for her role as Lee Ann Tuohy. The film told the heartwarming story of a wealthy white family adopting a poor black teenager with a gift for football. But in August 2023, Oher dropped a legal bombshell that shattered that feel-good image. He filed a lawsuit in Shelby County, Tennessee, claiming that the Tuohys never actually adopted him. He said that when he turned 18 in 2004, they tricked him into signing documents that gave them control over his life. He believed he was becoming a legal member of their family. In reality, they placed him under a conservatorship, something normally used for people with disabilities. Oher had no disabilities. He was a capable young man about to start college football. Yet the court still approved it. Tennessee Judge Kathleen Gomes, who had served for 43 years, later said she had never seen a conservatorship used this way. Oher didn't find out the truth until February 2023. That's when he learned the Tuohys had legal control over his story and decisions. He immediately took legal action. He asked the court to end the conservatorship, give him a full report of the money made using his name, and pay him what he was owed. The lawsuit didn't just shake the Tuohy household, it exposed a bigger issue: the money behind The Blind Side. The film earned over $309 million worldwide, yet O'Hare said he got little to nothing from it. He claimed the Tuohys and their two biological children each received $225,000 plus 2.5% of the film's net profits. He wasn't even told about the contract, let alone offered a share. That contract came through Sean Tuohy's close friend, Michael Lewis, who wrote the original book. The Tuohys denied everything. They said all 5 family members, O'Hare included, got equal payments. They claimed each person received around $14,000 from the book and up to $138,000 total from the film. But O'Hare's legal team pointed out that no financial records had ever been filed, even though the law required it. They believed the Tuohys used the conservatorship to cash in on O'Hare's fame while cutting him out of the profits. As the legal fight unfolded, people turned their attention to the film itself. Many critics said the movie was part of a bigger problem, the white savior narrative. It showed a rich white family rescuing a poor black kid, painting them as heroes while making O'Hare look helpless. After the lawsuit, people began questioning how much of the film was true. Some even demanded Sandra Bullock return her Oscar. They said her performance, no matter how good, helped sell a misleading and damaging story. Bullock wasn't blamed directly, but the backlash was intense. She had believed she was telling a story of hope. Instead, it now looked like she had unknowingly helped spread a false image. She was devastated. She loved the project. It had been a career highlight, but now it was forever linked to betrayal, greed, and a twisted version of the truth. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just 9 days before the lawsuit was filed, Bullock's longtime partner, Randall, had died after a private battle with ALS. They had been together for 8 years. She had stayed by his side during his illness, keeping it out of the public eye. When the lawsuit made headlines, Bullock was still in mourning. She hadn't even made her first public appearance since his death. Friends like Jennifer Aniston, Keanu Reeves, Sylvester Stallone, and Ryan Reynolds offered support. But Bullock was overwhelmed. She was grieving a loss and watching one of her proudest moments unravel at the same time. Behind the scenes, she was holding it together. But those close to her said the pain was deep. One loss was personal. The other shattered a story she had poured her heart into. Sandra Bullock adopted Lewis in January 2010. He was just 3 months old. Now, 15 years have passed, and Lewis isn't a baby anymore. He's a tall, confident teenager who stands a full head taller than his 5'7" mother. Photographers rarely catch them in public, but when they do, it's clear. Lewis has grown into someone who shares his mother's expressive face and calm strength. Even though they're not biologically related, Sandra has often said it feels like Lewis was always meant to be hers. She calls him perfect. He's not just tall for his age, he's mature too. Sandra once revealed that Lewis even gives her advice about her career. And people close to her have said he carries himself with a quiet wisdom that turns heads when he walks into a room. But Sandra never wanted her kids to grow up under flashing cameras. When she adopted Louis, and later her daughter Layla in 2015, she made a choice. She would protect them from the chaos of fame. She went so far as to have her late partner, Randall, sign a non-disclosure agreement before he could spend real time with her children. That's how seriously she guards their privacy. Sandra's path to becoming a mother wasn't smooth. She started the adoption process with her then-husband Jesse James, but after their divorce, she went through with it alone. Then came more storms. In 2014, a stalker broke into her home while she was inside. The trauma left her shaken and later diagnosed with PTSD. Therapy helped her heal, but the fear never fully vanished. And in 2023, she faced another heartbreak. Brian Randall, her partner of several years, died from ALS. Through it all, Sandra has held her family close. She's called them nutty and loving and understanding. No matter how tough things got, she stayed focused on giving her kids a stable, loving life. At the same time, Sandra's career kept climbing. It started back in 1987 with a small role in Hangman. Then came Speed in 1994, and everything changed. Over the next 3 decades, she starred in more than 50 films, comedies, dramas, action hits, even animation. She won the Oscar for The Blind Side, got another nomination for Gravity, picked up a Golden Globe and a SAG Award along the way. In 2005, she even got her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. People call her America's sweetheart. And it's not just because of her movies. It's because of how she makes people feel. Genuine, warm, and funny. From Miss Congeniality to The Lost City, Sandra has always found a way to keep audiences coming back. And with over 35 years in the spotlight, she's still one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. Her story is one of strength, survival, and a love for family that never fades.